Hey everyone, welcome to day 5. Today we're going to be talking about functions and tables here. So we're going to be focusing on how to generate a table. So now that we know about these function rules, we can actually use those to help us generate a table. And we'll show you how to do that. Go. And then we're also going to learn how to use that table to create a graph. And finally, we want to understand how to find inputs and outputs if we were just given a table. All right, so let's start off with our first example here. And so now that we know about these function rules, we know how to put something in and get something out, and even backwards, I can give you something out and find out what we put in. We know how to work our way through the rule. Let's see if we can use that rule to generate a table. All right, so if you look at my table down here, you'll notice that we have a column for x, and we have a column over here called f of x, and in quotations I put y. Because maybe back in 8th grade, when you looked at tables before, it used to say x, y. Well, y is the same thing as your output, so f of x and y are both the same thing. So it really doesn't matter which one you put over here, but since we're moving into high school math, we're going to start using this notation with the f of x. All right, so to generate this table, all right, what you need to remember that your x column represents your inputs and your f of x column represents your outputs. All right, and if I look at my table, I have a bunch of inputs, but I don't know what their outputs are, so I'm going to have to generate those using the given input. So I'm going to take this -1, since it's an input, I'm going to come up to my rule and I'm going to replace x with that -1 and see what I get. And I'll just do that off to the side over here. So I'm going to do 2 times -1 plus 1, right? So where that x was, I plugged in the -1. Well, 2 times -1 is -2. And then I still have a plus 1, so -2 plus 1 equals -1. Right, so I put a -1 in, I got a -1 out. Okay, so I'm going to put that -1 in there. And then I got to do it again. I got to do it again for the 0, right? So now I'm going to take a 0, I'm going to put it into my function and see what I get out. And I'll do that over here. So I got 2 times 0 plus 1. Well, 2 times 0 is 0, and 0 plus 1 equals 1. All right, so when I put a 0 in, I got a 1 out. Then I repeat it again, so I got to do it this time with a 1. So I got 2 times 1 plus 1, and 2 times 1 is 2. 2 plus 1 is 3. So I put a 1 in, I got a 3 out. All right, one more time. So this time our input is a 2, so we're going to have 2 times 2 plus 1, and 2 times 2 is 4, and 4 plus 1 is 5. So I put a 2 in, I get a 5 out. All right, so now we have successfully generated a table from a function rule. That's all there is to it. That's where these tables come from. So now let's take this table and let's turn it into a graph. All right. So you might recall back in 8th grade, we had graphed points before. So we have x comma y. All right, so if I wanted to plot a point here, I'm going to go to -1, -1, right? So that means I'm going to go left 1, down 1, and plot a point. And this point represents this set of inputs and outputs. So I'm going to get another one. I've got another point at 0, 1. Okay, so 0, up 1. So there's my second point from the table. The next one is at 1, 3. So that means I'm going to start at the origin. I'm going to go to the right 1 and up 3. Okay, and then my next point is at 2, 5. So I'm going to go right 2 and up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And plot that point. And then you start to see a shape emerging here. So as I get these points on there, we start to see a line forming, and that's exactly what we should see. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a smooth line through those points. All right. And there we go. And that's how we go from a rule to a table to a graph. All right. All right, so next up here we've got a table. So now that we know how to generate a table, we're going to use that table just to evaluate some inputs and outputs using function notation. All right, so we have this table up here, and remember that the x's represent inputs, and the f of x down here is the same thing as y and represents outputs. All right, so these are inputs up here, these are outputs down here. All right, so when we get a question like this, they're saying, hey, find this. This is f of 7, right? And remember from our previous lessons, we had talked about if this number is in the parentheses, that represents an input. So we want to go and find an input of 7. There it is. And we want to know what its output is. So it's going to be right below here, 33. So it means when I put a 7 in, I should get a 33 out. And using the table is kind of nice because I don't have to do that calculation stuff that we were doing before. They've already calculated all the inputs and outputs that we need and put them in this table here for us. So all we have to do is find the correct input and output. Let's try it again. So we have f of 2. So that 2 is in the parentheses, so that represents an input. So I'm going to go up here, I'm going to find an input of 2, which is right here, and its corresponding output is right below it in the output column at 74. So when I put a 2 in, I get a 74 out. All right, now remember, don't get tripped up on this last one. They did not give us an input, right? The number is not in the parentheses here. Instead, it's on the other side of the equal sign. So this represents an output. And they want to know what the input is supposed to be. So if they gave me an output, I'm going to go to the second row, the f of x row, and I'm going to find the output of 80 and look for its corresponding input, which is 4. So I'm just going to say x equals 4. All right, let's do one more to make sure that we got it here. So again, just if you need to, over here you can just say inputs and outputs, so that way you know which row is which. And then I'm going to read my notation down here. So this is an input of 0, so I'm going to go up here. 0 is the very first one in the input row. Its corresponding output is 1. So I put a 0 in, I get a 1 out. And we do it again. This time we're going to go up to our table and find 8. All right, and when I put an 8 in, I get a 47 out. All right, and then finally to finish this up, this last one, again, they did not give us an input, they gave us an output, and they're telling us that the output is 47, so I'm going to go to my output, all my outputs here, and I'm going to find 47 and go back to my corresponding input, which is 8. So when f of x equals 47, x equals 8. All right, guys, that's it for today. Have a great day.